Tadaima.
Mm-hmm. Fumiya came home and wandered into the living room just like every other day.
おかえりなさい、兄さん。
And Chizuru was there to greet him, just like every other day.
今日は遅かったですね。
んああ、ちょっと仕事が立て込んでいてね。
There's a girl in the clinic. She's in the clinic. Fumiya removed his coat.
まだ少しすることが残っているから、後で診療所を使うよ。
です。
いや、大丈夫だよ。
No, that's quite alright. Please don't go in there. You'll find a young girl.
今すぐ。
ああ、向こうで食べるから、そのようにしておいてくれないかな。
わかりました。
Yeah, he's giving the food to the girl. Fumiya sank onto a floor cushion inside. I have to keep her away from there. Fumiya was concealing something very dear to his heart in that building. Something he thought lost long ago. I finally found you. Now that I have, I won't let you out of my sight ever again.
お待たせしました。
Jesus. Chizuru had returned with dinner on a tray.
こぼしてしまわないように。
ありがとう。
He wanted to get back to the clinic as soon as possible. Though he'd put her to sleep with anesthetic, there was always the chance she'd wake up and run away. Fumiya hastily rose to his feet and left the living room. Fumiya slipped on a pair of sandals and marched for the clinic. Once inside, he shut the door, only to notice something was off. No, not just off. Wrong. Someone was sitting on the nearby chair, perusing a newspaper. They appeared to be a man, from what Fumiya could tell.
どなたですか?
Fumiya's eyes shifted to the bed as he raised his voice. It's either Orochiki or Reiji, and I don't know which to assume. The girl he brought over was sleeping there. Fortunately, she was completely unscathed. Someone catch me in the act?
お久しぶりです。
It's Orochiki, okay. See, I was imagining it could be a case of like... I just remember fucking... I remember like way back in Cartagena, like when Shugo just like strolls into that one guy's place, just starts spouting off random things like, oh wow, I noticed this detail. It's crazy how that aligns with this case I'm working on. You know, if my culprit was like, considerably like you, well, that'd make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? But of course it's Orochiki, because Orochiki also for some reason has interest in the girl. That is also true. I had forgotten about that. I know that voice.
どうしてあなたが?
The man set down the newspaper. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. A black squad car was parked outside the Kichiki residence.
時坂先生。
I am dashed over to my car.
何かあったか?
昨晩病院にいた人の確認が取れたそうです。ただ、朽木委員長だけは。
そっか。
I got out of the car.
在宅か確認したかい?
いいえ、時坂先生が来るまで待機と言われています。
Must have been Wozumi's doing.
そうか。ではまず。
母屋ではないのですか?
電話に出なかったことを好意的に解釈すれば。
Not to mention how it made for an apt hiding place. It was that reasoning which spurred Ayame and I toward the clinic. I opened the front door for a crack and peeked inside. There were sandals on the floor. I quietly slid the door the rest of the way open. However, I heard no sounds from within, not even after I strained my ears. Was I wrong? He's dead. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, yet there were still no signs of anyone reacting to the noise. Guess there's no need for stealth then. No? It was with that thought in mind that I made a break for the examination room, where I spotted someone collapsed on the floor.
Fumiya-san!
I raced up to Fumiya the moment I recognized him. He groaned and raised his head to look at me.
何があったのですか?
Questioned Fumiya as I checked him for wounds. His eyes were two dull orbs, almost like he was just barely maintaining consciousness.
それがトウコちゃんだ。
Saito.
そっか。朽木誠か。
I seized Fumiya by his lapels.
時坂先生。
Ayame hurried over and held me back.
落ち着いてください先生。
I let go of Fumiya.
六式誠が。
Ayame questioned him in my stead.
現れた。いや、いたんです。
それは 朽木先輩ではなく。
Unfortunately, his words appeared to fall on deaf ears. Wait, how did Rokshiki find out about Iroha? I scanned the examination room with that thought until I found a newspaper on the floor next to the doctor's desk. Curious, I rose to my feet and checked it out. It was yesterday morning's paper. It had a photo with Iroha in it, just like the one I'd seen this morning. So Rokshiki saw this and realized Iroha was Toko's daughter. The odds of that were rather high, especially considering how even Stella had pieced that together. No, hold up, that still doesn't explain everything.
なぜここに彼女が来ることを知っていた?
Turned my gaze back to Umiya. He'd once harbored Rokshiki in this very building. And knowing the latter, Rokshiki would surely be sly enough to ensure that wouldn't be the last time he'd use their history to his advantage.
詳しく話を聞かなければならないようだ。
I grabbed Humiya's arm and forced him to his feet. If Rokshiki really had whisked Iroha away, then this guy wouldn't have any idea where they were going. No, my only hope would be to suss out that information. Chizuru hurried over from the main house after Ayame and I stepped out of the clinic with Humiya in tow.
兄さん。
千鶴
Humiya raised his head and stopped in place, as did I.
痛い。
However, Humiya had nothing to say to that.
朽木さんは昨日からご両親のもとへ行かれていたそうで。
Ayame whispered into my ear.
兄さん。
なんでもないんだよ
Ultimately, Humiya just shook his head.
六式誠が
That was all I told her. I figured the rest was better left unsaid for now.
すまない千鶴
Humiya trudged off with only those words.
何かありましたら。
That was the last thing Ayame told Chizuru before following Humiya. I drove off, trailing the squad car housing Humiya. Where could Iroha be? Humiya said Rokshiki had come to him last night. If he'd left with Iroha shortly after, that meant he probably wouldn't be anywhere in the immediate vicinity, so searching blindly would do us no good. Ayame had radioed in to request a bolo just before she'd taken off, but this guy wouldn't have eluded our clutches all these years if that were enough to catch him. What's more, he was smart enough to surmise his former hiding hole, the church in Chilpu, had probably been compromised. So long story short, our search was back to square one. The squad car rolled into the MPD's parking lot. I went to CID Section 1 rather than join the cops escorting Humiya to the interrogation room.
おおレイジ
I bumped into Ozmi as he was ambling out of his office.
どこか行くのか?
てめえが連れてきたやつの聴取に決まってるだろうが。
Yeah!
いや彼の話を聞いても六式の行方はわからないだろう
Never mind.
ああ、わかってる。
Ozmi passed me by and left the office. Slumped onto my usual spot at the visitor's sofa and heaved a deep sigh. The further they got into Humiya's interrogation, the more misery would bring everyone connected to him in the case. The old me would have questioned him in pursuit of the truth despite that, but now I simply couldn't be bothered with it. And again, maybe I just felt that way because unlike normally, I had a very personal stake in this particular case. God, just how selfish can you get, Reiji Tokisaka? Steam wafted from a teacup set on the table before me.
随分としょぼくれていますね先輩
なんだ
It's just you. However, Yaginuma swooped in and snatched the teacup just before I could.
僕が自分で飲むために入れたんです
まあいいけどな
I stared daggers into Yaginuma as he took a seat on the opposite couch.
何ですか飲みたいのでしたら
いやお茶はどうでもいいんだけどな
I said that despite knowing just how kindly he'd take to that insinuation.
そんなはずがないでしょ僕は忙しい中こうして訪ねてきたんです
Yeah, keep telling yourself that, man.
でそのお忙しい二課の警視殿が一体何の用だ
そちらの状況を聞きましてね
協力できること
I doubted one additional man on the search team would help us find Rokshiki any faster.
僕も六式には煮えを飲まされていますからね何としてでも鼻を明かしてやりたいんですよ
何ができるんだ
先輩は空の少女の像がどこにあるかご存
The girl in shell statue. Misa's body, in other words. Rokshiki had stolen and hidden it away someplace shortly after it was found during that case 8 years ago.
いろいろ調べましてねようやく手がかりをつかんだんですよ
I knew Yaginuma was totally playing me,
わかった
but I had no choice but to bite. Oh ho ho. Cutscene. Yes, Thursday, that is today, February 27th of 64. Shinzo Mami's Gurren shell statue returns from the USA. Oh! The Gurren shell statue, an infamous statue recovered and subsequently stolen by Makoto Roshiki after a series of murders in April 56, was rediscovered in the USA. Oh. This is not only the key piece of evidence in that case, but also fashioned from a human corpse. The US government agreed to officially return the statue to Japan after many discussions with the current cabinet. He did say he had that US contact. Statue arrived today at Chopu Airfield on a US military cargo plane, then be handed over to Japan after clearing customs. I read the newspaper strewn across the table. It was all part of the plan Yaginuma had devised yesterday. The idea was to trade Oroshiki the statue for Iroha Saigasa. He should have been more obsessed with Misa than Iroha. As such, we were sure he'd jump at this opportunity. There was even a message addressed to Oroshiki in the ad space directly below the article. We didn't know if he'd actually see it. The odds were good when considering this was the same newspaper that published that photo with Iroha.
兄さん、新聞を片付けてください。
No. I folded up the paper and scooshed it to the side once Yukari emerged from the kitchen.
はい、どうぞ。
Yukari served me toast and coffee. She's been back here since the night before.
しかしなんでこんな時期に帰ってきたんだ
Oh wait, it's 2:27. Hold up, it's 2:27. I gotta save. According to the guide, I gotta save at the beginning of 2:27. It makes getting to the true ending a lot easier. So 2:27, save. But also that means we're locked into this grand ending. So let's see how this goes. Not that she would have known how busy I'd be, of course, but the timing still couldn't have been worse.
自分の家に帰るくらい、いつでも構わないではないですか。
Yukari set a bowl of salad right next to my toast.
きちんと食べてますか？
食ってるからそう心配するなって
She didn't come back just to baby me again, did she?
お仕事は順調ですか？
Just lovely.
まあオケラのことは助かったよ
お役に立てたのでしたら何よりです。
Yukari's gaze shifted to the folded newspaper.
空の少女ですか？
ああ今日アメリカから到着するって話
絵の方はどうなったのですか？
修復はしているいつから再展示されるかはわからないが
It had been nearly 60 years to the day since Sei Maizono's arrest. Considering it had been almost 5 since she'd started serving her sentence, I couldn't imagine the restoration was already finished by now. I mean, this was the same person who made perfect forgeries of all Shinzo Mami's works in no time flat. It also wasn't like she was Homer's Penelope, postponing her fate by prolonging the work for as long as possible either. She was already serving life in prison and had no death sentence to fear, after all.
兄さん、
Yukari cocked her head.
まあいや世間を騒がせた絵だから公開はされないのかもしれない
そうですか。
ななんだ見たかったのか
いえ、そうではなく、
そうだな
The woman in the painting wasn't Toko, but I couldn't help but be reminded of her whenever I saw it, regardless.
さて
I downed the rest of my coffee and got out of my
今
chair.
日の打ち合わせに行ってくるお前は
昆虫学会の会合に出てからお買い物をしてくるつもりです。まだ時間はありますから。
わかった
では、いってらっしゃいませ。
Thank you. NPD, CID, Section 1. Took up my usual perch atop the visitor's couch and opened the newspaper.
本当に来るもんかね
Ozumi cocked his head as he raised a thermos of coffee.
お前らが邪魔をしなければな頼むから前もって警官隊を伏せ
There would be no point in setting a trap if the man himself didn't show.
その辺のことはしっかりと言明されてる
So he claimed, but I doubted he'd actually go through with it, given how by the book he was.
でその指揮を取ってる警視殿は
現状で準備してるようだなどうもかなり前から計画していたらしい
Certainly knew how to nurse a grudge, that was for sure. Though maybe that was only natural, considering this was the man who murdered his sister and torpedoed his career.
お前は経緯をどこまで知ってるんだ
米国から空の少女に使われている遺体について紹介が来たって話だが
Sounded like Yaginuma was handling things all on his own then. More power to him, but I couldn't say it felt good to be left in the dark.
警官隊を近くに待機させるんだろうが決して気取られるなよ
飛行場の格納庫を一つ押さえてある
Doubted they'd pull anything rash with Wozumi at the helm, but Roshiki would probably be going into this anticipating police involvement.
人質とからの少女像
The girl and shell statue was fairly big when you factored in the shell portion, Too big for someone to reasonably carry and run at the same time. Maybe he'll come in a car then. Or maybe he has an accomplice. I didn't want anyone besides Orochi showing up at the exchange site, but we had no way of enforcing that. Guess I'll just have to ask Yaginuma what he has in mind later.
さて、俺は現場に向かうが。
ここに残っといても仕方ないからな。
Okay. There's a wide expanse of vacant land on the west side of Chofu Airfield. It was littered with construction sites for buildings being made in preparation for the U.S. military base in Yoyogi that'd be relocating here. The place Yaginuma had picked for the hostage exchange, however, was totally untouched. Ozumu was already headed for the airfield. The handoff was scheduled for 6 p.m., right when it'd start to get dark. But we couldn't rule out the possibility that Orochiki was already here, spying on us from a distance.
どう思う、ヤギヌマ。
何をどう思えばいいのか分かりませんよ。
That's what I'm fucking asking. Yaginuma shrugged, his coat rustling in concert.
六式は来るのかな。
来てもらわねば困ります。そのために警官隊も配置しておかないんですから。
捕まえる手立てはあるのか。
人質の身柄さえ確保できるのであれば。
お前がそんな首相なことを言うとはね。
心外ですね。僕は心からそう思っているんですよ。
So he said in the most insincere tone possible.
僕は奴の鼻を明かしてやりたいんですよ。
その気持ちはわかるがな。油断していると手玉に取られるぞ。
そんなことは重々承知しています。今の僕に油断はありませんよ。
Right again for every time someone got outfoxed after saying that. Airplane. A plane circling the airfield overhead dipped down and got into landing position. Looked like a US C-130 cargo plane from what I could tell. Its wings proudly housed 4 whirring propellers.
わざわざご苦労なことだ。
輸送機が来たのはあくまでついでですよ。
Yaginuma shrugged again.
さて、僕は打ち合わせをしなければならないので。
それは構わないが。
I surveyed the area.
吹きさらしは寒くてかなわん。
後で交代要員に。
Yaginuma strolled off toward the airfield without so much as another word.
やれやれ。
He managed to give me the slip before I could ask him any of the burning questions on my mind. Sat down on a pile of concrete meant for construction and whipped out a cigarette. I blew a puff of smoke into the winter sky. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have 1,000 worries on my mind, but I was a lot calmer than anyone who had all the context of this scenario would probably expect me to be. That was chiefly because I was seriously doubted Rokushiki would ever harm Iroha. She didn't fit the criteria for his victims in the slightest. So oddly enough, I trusted him in that sense. Still, Iroha must have been terrified, hence why we needed to save her as quickly as possible. He'll show up. He has to, right? I kept mentally repeating that mantra to myself together as I took another survey of the area. A residential area for U.S. military personnel's families known as Kanto Village was being built nearby, so it wasn't like the place was completely devoid of hiding spots. There were probably cops lying in ambush in places like those, despite my warnings to Ozumi and Yaginuma alike. Will Orochiki show up from one of them? Will he make his escape through there? And just where is Yaginuma's confidence coming from anyway?
Tokisaka-san.
Masaki. Suddenly a voice derailed my train of thought.
なんだ、お前も来ていたのか。
I turned around and found Masaki and Toji sauntering my way. Toji!
ヤギ沼に呼ばれた。どうもいろいろと考えているようだぞ。
Toji came to a halt outside my personal space.
空の少女像の運搬などを任されました。それとこれ、昼飯です。
Masaki handed me a paper bag. I opened it to find a thermos and a rice ball inside.
ヤギ沼に頼まれたのか。
ええ、まあ。
Masaki glanced at the
あっ
airfield.
ちに警察官は何人いる？
魚住も含めて10人くらいだな。
That sure wasn't a lot. The rest were probably on surveillance duty all around the area. It would be a hell of a lot easier if one of them could catch Rokushiki, but I better not count on it.
交代しますか？
いや、俺があっちに行っても何もすることがないからな。こ
I opened the thermos to find tea inside, then poured it into the
う
lid.
周りを見ていてくれよ。
ええ。でも、一体どこから来るんですかね？
Masaki scanned the
そ
area.
んなことはわからねえよ。今どこにいるのかすら分かってねえんだから。
もどかしいな。
とにかく今は町の一手しかないさ。
I had a bite of the rice ball. The taste of the dried plums within seeped into my tongue.
普通ならここにたどり着く前に捕まると考えるんでしょうけれど。
Couldn't have put it better myself. After all, this was the guy who had evaded the authorities for 6 years straight on 2 separate occasions.
やつのことだ。どんなに警備を密にしてもここに現れるだろうさ。
Yeah, but the bigger problem is
何らかの逃走手段を用意しているかもしれないな。
例えば飛行機ですか。
Muskie glanced at the runway.
個人で軽飛行機でも持ってるなら別だがな。国内の定期便もまだないし。
Still, the point remained that there were no planes he could just expect to sneak aboard and get away on like at a regular airport.
空の少女像も持っていかなければなりませんからね。だとするとやっぱり車か。
空き地とは言ってもここまで車で入るのは難しいぞ。排水用の溝もあるし。
Such as the lump of concrete I was sitting on, for instance.
悪路を走れば空の少女だって破損する恐れがある。
Personally, though, I couldn't imagine he was the sentimental type who'd be satisfied with just getting a simple look at Misa.
八木沼から何か聞いてないのか。
六式が来た後に気づかれないように包囲するとは言っていたな。
Doji shrugged. Guess I should take comfort in the fact that Yagin was confident Rokshiki won't get away on his or anyone else's watch.
では自分たちは一旦あっちに戻ります。
ああ。何かあったらまた知らせてくれ。
わかりました。ではまた後で。
Muskie and Toji left together. I had a sip of my cold tea and took stock of my surroundings yet again. I couldn't see anyone apart from the two of them. There was still time. I chomped on a cigarette and rolled it around without even lighting it. Ultimately, I could do nothing but wait for something to happen. The ball finally started rolling when the sun began setting in the western skies. It was then that Muskie returned from the airfield. He was pushing a cartload with something large covered in cloth. That must be...
それがそうなのか。
ええ、
Muskie nodded, slowly pushing the cart across the uneven terrain.
先ほど少し確認しましたが破損もなく
Muskie got closer and unfurled the cloth peak, revealing part of the black shell.
ギリギリまで見せないようにするそうです。
Huh. Is he trying to get Yorokushi to jump the gun and slip up? Checked my watch to find out there was still some time until the exchange. However, our part of the bargain had already arrived. So there was no guarantee he wouldn't try to surprise us by showing early.
周囲の警戒は怠るなよ。
わかってます。
Yet Muskie stayed frozen in place.
とはいえ、今から緊張し通しだと持たないぞ。
いや、ですけどいつ現れるかわからないじゃないですか。
乱歩の小説に出てくるような怪人とは違うんだぞ。
If he did, I'd have to throw in the towel and pray for Sherlock Holmes to come to life and save us. Though knowing him, he might just deem the case beneath him and leave us to our fate.
しかし、アメリカにあったとはね。
Turned my attention to girl in shell, still concealed under that cloth.
前の事件の時に六式が練馬のグラントハイツに持ち込んで知り合いの将校に預けたそうです。その人が帰国した際、像に死体が使われていることが分かってあちらで騒ぎになったそうですよ。
そんなことになっていたとはね。さて。
I could see Yaginuma approaching from the airfield. He was all alone. From what I could tell, there were no other cops around apart from him.
お待たせしました。
ああ。魚住と当時は
待機していますよ。ここに大勢いても仕方ありませんから。
Yaginuma replied in a hushed voice. It seemed everyone else had begun watching for Rokshiki in earnest. I joined them, looking away from Yaginuma and scanning the area. It was twilight, the perfect time for him to show his face. While that made it hard for us to see where he was coming from and what he was doing, the same applied to him. I was sure he knew that just as well as I did.
先輩。
Yaginuma leaned back against me, his hands in his coat pockets.
なんだよ。
これを持っていてください。
Yaginuma snuck something heavy to me under the cover of our superimposed shadows. It was a cold lump of metal.
おい。これは。
弾は装填されています。
Yaginuma stepped away from me, leaving that heavy hunk of metal in my pocket.
安心してください。何が起ころうと、先輩が逮捕されることはありませんから。
だったらお前がやればいいだろうが。
He was probably the one with a deeper grudge against Rokshiki after all.
当然、僕も用意はしていますよ。
Because I brought 2 pieces, baby. Yaginuma tapped his left flank before turning to Masaki.
象の覆いを取れ。
見せるのか。
ここに実物があることを示さなければ。
わかりました。
Oski stepped up to the statue and unfurled the cloth like a cape. Long time no see, huh? There stood Girl in Shell in all its macabre glory. The product of Shinzo Mamiya's madness, fashioned from the grave wax of Misa's corpse.
見事なものですね。
Yaginuma regarded it with awe.
破損はないか。
ええ、それはありません。
Oski nodded, folding up the cloth.
さて、これで来てくれるといいのですが。
Yaginuma shone a flashlight on the statue. Misa's illuminated body stood out against the darkness of twilight like an angel descended from the heavens. I instinctively looked away from her. Just couldn't help but be reminded of Toko. Hey, bud. The air suddenly reverberated with that voice. Yaginuma frantically scanned the area with his flashlight. However, I didn't see anyone.
来たか。
Called out into the darkness. Might have been in the complete opposite direction for all I knew, but I couldn't have cared less at that moment.
出てこい、六式。
Obviously, Orochiki didn't step up to the plate. Still couldn't tell where exactly he was either. It seemed Motsuki was just as clueless.
その前に子供の無事を確認させてくれ。
I stood next to Girl and Shell and kept my eyes trained dead ahead. Sounded like Orochiki's voice was coming from somewhere between 10 to 2 o'clock.
信用できない。本当に連れてきたんだろうな。
Orochiki didn't answer me. He's planning on taking Girl and Shell with him first and only releasing Iroha after he's gotten himself to safety.
連れてきていないのであれば、交渉の余地はない。
Yaginuma shouted loud and clear.
おい、ヤギ沼。
ポーズですよ。
Yaginuma whispered that to me.
それでも実際に交渉を打ち切ることもありえますが。どうした六式。一人は残させてもらう。構わないな。
俺が残る。
I volunteered myself before Yaginuma could choose.
わかった。我々は下がる。
Yaginuma nodded.
手はず通りに頼みますよ。
ああ
Did we really have much of a plan? Other than just use the gun? Yaginuma and Masuki retreated toward the airfield. The fact that Orochiki said nothing in response meant he must have been in the opposite direction, just as I had suspected. Eventually, I was left alone with Girl and Shell. Oroshiki's voice resounded throughout the air again.
そろそろ姿を見せたらどうだ。
Called out directly ahead of me.
そう焦らずとも出て行きますよ。
His voice was even closer than I expected. Quickly swiveled toward his voice, in the direction of the southern construction site. Hey, bud.
お久しぶりです、時坂さん。
Makoto Orochiki was there, lurking in the darkness. Felt like I was meeting an old friend. No, a mortal enemy, for the first time in ages.
人質はどうした。
I got straight to
ご
business.
心配なく。
Orochiki raised his hand, revealing a rope tied around it. On the other end was...
イロハ。
おじさん。
Though her voice was quiet and hoarse, she still managed to speak.
おじさんですか。
Orochiki smirked.
おい、もういいだろ。早く交換だ。
They wanted him mentioning anything Ira was better off not
お
knowing.
や、包囲が完了するのを待たなくてもいいのですか。
It hit me right where it hurt most. Bozumi was definitely on the move right now, but Orochiki worked that into his plan as well.
まずはそちらから解放してくれ。
I go to Orochiki, staying with the girl and Shell all the while.
そちらが先です。
So he's not gonna jump at the bait, is he?
分かった。
Turned around for a moment, then circled to the back of the cart once Yaginuma gave me an approving nod. I pushed slowly, taking care to ensure the statue didn't accidentally fall over. If it did, then all of this would have been for nothing.
ミサ。
Uroshiki's jubilant voice rumbled across my ears. I knew it. So Misa really is his greatest obsession. So long as he got his hands on her body, he wouldn't need Iraha as a substitute.
ご心配なく。彼女には何も言ってませんから。
何のことかわからないな。
It was painfully obvious that he was referencing the truth of Iraha's parentage. Still, I played dumb.
いや、しかし、混ぜ物があるとやはり違いが出てきますね。
少し黙ったらどうだ。
I stopped pushing. There was still a decent gap between me and Iraha.
混ぜ物と言っては失礼でしたかな。
Roshiki smirked. Depending on where he took this, it was possible I'd have to shut his mouth for him. I felt around for the object in my pocket, sitting behind the cover of Girl and Shell so that Roshiki didn't notice.
彼女もあと数年経てば変わるのでしょうか。そうすれば良い素材になるかもしれませんね。
You son of a bitch. Reached in my pocket before I even knew what I was doing. Drew the pistol Yaginuma had passed to me earlier. No, Reiji. We already did this, Reiji. We did this in the first game. You pulled the pistol on him. You don't get the good ending by popping him. It was the latest MPD-issued firearm, a 5-chambered revolver. That is a... Oh. That's almost like... That's very similar to Shugo's final CG in Cartagra, actually. Now hold up. Now, one second. Settings. Let me pull up that screenshot. No, hold up. Let me pull up that screenshot. 'Cause I know I got saved around here somewhere. Pretty similar framing, I'd say. Here, one sec. Let me open up display capture again. I'll just drag it into view here. Oh, it's not gonna pop up because the game's got priority. Alright, then I guess I'll just edit it in later. But yeah, other than like he doesn't have his left hand bracing the gun, like the framing of everything is pretty fucking similar, I'd say. That's crazy. Because that's just exactly where my mind went the moment I saw that. The moment I saw this post, I was like, oh shit, yeah, no, that's exactly what that is.
懐かしいですね。
Did I take a screenshot of this? I think it was... Well, if I didn't already, I did now. Yeah, no. Brings back memories, don't it? Yet Roshi simply smirked.
あなたにそれを向けられるのは2度目ですか。果たして今回はどうなりますかね。
Don't do it.
違う結末を迎えたくなければ。
Aimed directly at his chest. He's clearly got some kind of contingency for that something's gonna happen to Iraha if you hit him. And by hit him, I mean shoot him. The sights were tiny, therefore hard to see through, but I couldn't miss him from this range.
それは怖いですね。
Roshi took the rope and held Ira in front of his left breast.
おい!
I turned the muzzle away from Iraha. Even if she couldn't see me, I couldn't bear to keep pointing it at her.
そのくらいにしておくんだな。
焦りは禁物ですよ。
Roshi pocketed his right hand.
さあ、ミサをこちらへ。それともまだ何か策を弄しているのですか。
それはそちらだろう。
I retrained my aim on Roshiki while keeping a close eye on his right hand.
私は何も。ただこれ以上待たされると、私も退屈しのぎに何を喋ってしまうかわかりませんからね。
He's just baiting you, Reiji. Don't listen to him. But in spite of that, my arm trembled, refusing to lower.
そう、例えば彼女の出自なども。
Roshiki touched Iraha's chin.
六式!
The bullet sprung forward and struck exactly where I'd aimed. Roshiki's chest. Roshiki started careening. Iraha escaped from Roshiki's grip and darted toward me. No, but he's got something up his... He's got a trick. I lowered myself to my knees and took her into my arms. No, we're not out of the woods yet.
もう大丈夫だ。
I untied her bonds after reassuring her. He had his hand in his pocket too. Remember that. I'm totally expecting to hear another pop. Oh, I had to press enter again. Okay. I gently rubbed Yora's back as she sobbed into my shoulder. She heaved with fear and joy at her newfound freedom. It's okay. There's no need to cry. Nothing like this will ever happen to you again, I swear it. Pop! Cops raced over from the airfield. I pocketed the revolver and approached the fallen Roshiki.
見事ですよ、時坂さん。まさか人質がいるのに撃ってくるとは。
発砲許可はもらってたんだな。
I couldn't let Yura see this. I wanted to see the face of the man I'd shot.
まあいいでしょう。ミサの姿も。
Roshiki hacked up blood. I must have shot him right through a lung.
妙だとは思ったんだよ。あんた。わざと撃たせたな。
Because he never had an escape plan in the first place. Like, I would expose his right side of his chest to me, or I'd provocatively put his hand into his pocket. Oh. Even though I can now plainly see he hadn't been grabbing anything at all. Fuck. Yep. He knew he had no escape plan. Has been part of a scheme all along. Yep, he had no escape plan at all. He had an opportunity to see Misa, but he knew he wouldn't make it out of it. So maybe he was hoping he'd be taken to hospital for jail if he got shot, then sees the opportunity to escape. Nope. He wanted his last moments to be seen. Roshiki laughed as he coughed up blood. No. He just wanted to be injured. He would have put more effort into dodging. But with this much blood, I found that harder and harder to believe. Yaginuma and the others arrived on the scene.
拘束しろ。
Cops surrounded Roshiki at Yaginuma's command. But soon enough.
ヤギヌム警視、この出血は。
僕の命令で撃たせた。何の問題もない。
Yaginuma was covering for me, just like he'd promised.
しかし、早急に手当てをしなければ手遅れになります。
Okay.
何？構いませんよ。
Roshiki suddenly spoke up.
留置場の暮らしも悪くはありませんが、いささか退屈ですからね。
Roshiki sighed.
時坂さんに殺されるのであれば本望ですよ。私はあなたから多くのものを奪い
Yeah,
ました
that
から
too.
ね。
That definitely makes sense for him. He's trying to now sow the seeds of an obsession in me with his dying breath.
俺がお前を殺したのは間違いない。
I reined in my anger before speaking up. Did you? I'd be damned if I caved in and scared Ioraha.
だがな、覚えておけ。お前を撃ったのは
Not just for her, but her life too.
そういうことにしておきましょうか。
And with one final smirk.
心停止しました。
Nice. The cop who'd been attempting to treat him stopped. And so it was that Makoto Roshiki's life came to an abruptly anticlimactic end.
搬送しろ。
Yaginuma shot me a menacing glare that could turn blood to ice, and back the revolver in short order.
僕の判断は適切だったようですね。
お前の方が撃ちたかっただろうに。
もし上の方でこの件が問題になったら、僕は躊躇なく先輩を売りますからね。
I had already figured as much.
まあ、構わないぞ。撃ったのは事実だ。
I turned around and ruffled Ira's hair, not bothering to watch the cops haul Rokishi's body away.
おじさん？
帰ろうか。君がいるべき場所へ。
Chapter 9 The Primo-mobile. I revisited the graveyard just as the clouds were on the verge of bursting into tears of snow.
Yukiko.
Oh, his fiance Yukiko, okay. I was like, what the fuck? When did Yukiko die? Wrong Yukiko, okay. Sorry, I kind of forget because, you know, you never fucking talk about her. This is like the first time you fucking acknowledged her in years. I offered my family grave some flowers and clasped my hands in prayer. She's been resting here for so many years now.
奴をこの手で殺した。敵討ちのつもりはないと言ったが。
Or maybe I've just been a sore loser, couldn't stand the thought of everything going that bastard's way. Even though everything went that bastard's way, because that's exactly what he wanted. Wouldn't be here having a talk with Yukiko's grave if I could decide which one was the truth.
何も変わりはしないな。君が帰ってくるわけでもないし。
In the end, I'd kill him not to see justice served, but to settle a score.
それでも敵討ちとは言いたくない。
I'd done it for my satisfaction and mine alone.
さて。
Flecks of snow plummeted from the sky as I strolled through the residential district in Mitaka. While the circumstances were different from that day 14 years ago, the snow was still as immaculate as it'd been back then. I arrived at the Kichiki residence. Chizoda was standing all by herself next to the front door, surrounded by snow.
どうも。
Chizoda
お
bowed.
邪魔します。
Our exchange was terse.
兄について。
The man in question was currently being interrogated by the police.
まだ何も。
I shook my head. Probably had nothing to do with the case apart from stealing Ira from the hospital, but he had yet to make any kind of deposition. I wasn't going to tell Chizoda anything unless he finally caved.
そうですか。では。
Chizoda stepped out of my way, head
失
hung.
礼します。
I entered the house at her urging. I rang a bell and silently prayed for a while. Toko's photo was on the altar. Yeah, like, fucking Chizoda gives a shit. She was looking away and offered no smile, as per usual. It really has been ages since I last saw her alive, hasn't it?
君の笑顔の印象がだいぶ薄れてしまったよ。
I flashed the picture of sardonic
笑
grin.
っている姿は随分と見ていたはずなのだけれどね。君とのことが思い出に変わっているのかもしれないが。
I'll never forget you. Ever.
今日は君に伝えたいことがあったんだ。
According to Nanako Sawashiro, who'd been in attendance when Toko had given birth and died, her last word had been Ruri. Though I had no way of knowing why she said it, the fact that she'd done so right after seeing her newborn daughter left only a few interpretations.
君はそう名付けたかったのかな。
The word brought to mind the final painting she'd left this world. In any case, I figured I should probably call her by that name, in Toko's presence anyway.
彼女ルリは幸せそうだったよ。
I doubted she'd ever find herself in these sorts of perils again. Now when the obsession surrounding her had all been snuffed out at their sources. Maybe the same went for mine as well.
いや忘れるわけにはいかないな。
Not Yukiko. Nor Toko either. Don't act like Yukiko is a fucking obsession to you. Maybe in like the fucking first half of the first game, but ever since then, no, bro, don't fucking lie to me like that. The fact that I completely forgot that was your fiance's name, and at no point And that when you started addressing her, I did not immediately think of your fiance. I totally thought of the character from the fucking last game who was ever more present than your fiance had ever been. Come on, bro. Don't try to play like your Yukiko as part of the obsession. I had to accept the past, no matter how heartrending it was. Once I did, I needed to start living for the future as well. Not just for myself, but to live out the lives those two had been robbed of. Yeah, you can save your "this is for Yukiko as well" bullshit. I don't fucking care. Yeah, I'm not gonna look up the translation of that one either. I know I've been ignoring them. I'm sure that has some like greater meaning, but I'm way more locked into the ending right now and I don't want to look away from it.